to Gentle Yoga. Thank you for joining me, Jeani, your guide for the next hour. We're here in the ACC's community room, and we're going to be focusing a little more on our lower limbs today, getting some lower back work as well as we move through our warm-ups and then the walking meditation. But today's class will be focusing on stretching out the back of the legs with the use of a chair, as well as just sitting on the mat if you're comfortable with that. So hopefully we'll have a good time exploring those poses that'll give us some release at the back of the legs and the lower back. Having said that, let's go ahead and meet at the back of the mat, and we'll start. Yes, with just noticing the breath. As you come to practice, starting at the back in our home base of mountain, just notice how you're feeling, how the mat feels under the feet. If a micro bend to the knees will help relieve any tightness as we're standing in our first edition of mountain. With each iteration, as we return to our home base, you can lengthen through the legs, through the back, and just become a longer, stronger, taller mountain as our practice continues. As we start to quiet down, noticing the breath, we'll go ahead and start to cultivate a more yogic breath, bringing our left palm to rest on the chest, right palm on the belly, underneath the belly button. Start to focus in on the breaths with a little more effort. A slower inhale, a brief pause, and exhale. Another pause before the next breath cycle begins. With the next inhale, notice the hand on the chest lifting, maybe the collarbones also lift at the top of that inhale. Engage the core on the exhale and slowly release all that air and energy. We'll finish cultivating the breath with the sound of the ocean at the back of the throat. Widen that space above the voice box. On both the inhales and the exhales. And connect to that deep ocean-like yogic breath. Helps to keep us calmer and help us persevere through any tough, challenging times on the mat or off. We'll go ahead and bring the hands down to the side. Let's bring our body and breath together. With the next inhale, start to root down at the feet. Feel a lengthening of the body, energy entering the body from the feet up through the spine to the crown of the head and beyond at the top of the inhale. As you start that slow, controlled exhale, feel the energy return, reverse order, through the legs, back to the earth, feeling just slightly more rooted, grounded as you finish your exhale, core engaged. Inhaling next, we're going to start tipping the center of gravity towards our toes. See if you can feel that edge at the end of the breath. And then use the next breath. Slowly roll the center of gravity towards the heels until you find that tipping edge there as well.
State Senator Dr. Richard Payne.
We're using a couple of breath cycles just to feel that heel to toe alignment. And then give yourself the time to return to center, somewhere at the top of the ankles. Feel as if you're setting back into your home base of mountain like water going down a drain. Inhale, start to gather the energy upwards, and as we're feeling that energy lifting up through the crown of the head, Go ahead and exhale. Slowly roll the weight towards the outer right edge of the feet. Long body, nice and tall. Fully exhaled over to one side. We'll go ahead and inhale up to the center. And then exhale over to the other side until you feel that edge there. That's a 3-part breath you can use. Inhaling to the center, exhaling to either side. Or you can use a 2-part breath. Just breathe from one side to the other side. And then get that horizontal mapping at the soles of the feet, returning to center. Resetting the mountain, you can bend the knees, lift the toes, lift the heels. Resetting a little taller in our mountain. Feel that energy lifting all the way from the feet to the crown of the head. And with that lift still there, we're just making small circles in one direction. I'm going towards the left, making small circles at the ankle until they radiate outwards to the edge of my feet, to the perimeter. And once that's identified, make the circle smaller, return to center, back at home base. And as we settle in, release the mountain, go ahead and reset it, inhaling nice and tall, and then making small circles in the opposite direction. Same path, different direction. Notice if it's a little choppier, if you have a little stiffness. If not, we're just lubricating a little more in this direction. And then we'll tighten up the circles and return to center. Imagine water going down a drain. And then here, once more resetting the mountain. We're going to lift the heels to the toes, go back down to the heels, gently rocking back, lifting the toes. And that way we just loosen our grip on the mat. So with the next movement here, go ahead and start shifting the weight from side to side, one foot to the other. You can widen your stance if you'd like to, pivoting out the toes just slightly. And then when you get a chance, as that momentum gets a little larger, we're going to keep our stance where it is, and we're going to start swiveling at the shoulders. We're just moving the weight from side to side. And the more your shoulders, your torso moves to one side, lift those toes so we don't torque out the opposite leg. You'll feel that. As you get more and more to one side, we're lifting the toe along with us, and we're just pivoting gently on the heel. If you have plantar fasciitis, don't put too much pressure at the center of the heel. Just slowly making some movements. And then we'll let that peter out. And come on back. And resetting the mountain once more, bringing in the feet if they were a little wider. And go ahead and imagine an imaginary tail just sticking out just slightly. We're going to just slightly bend that pelvic bowl back as if we had a tail. And then we're going to lift up with the torso. The legs just straighten up by just simply straightening out. And we get hopefully a longer, taller torso over our limbs as we're moving up towards the shoulders. We've gotten some of the hips lubricated in that movement, but let's have a little more in the ankles, hips, and knees by simply lifting that right heel and bringing standing weight to that left leg. But if it's still stiff, you can bend that knee just slightly. And we're just going to make small rolling actions at the ankle. If it feels good, you can make the rolling actions a little bigger and maybe bring more of the knee, maybe a little more in the hip area. But move slowly, exploratory movements, small, just to see where you are. Go ahead and slowly reverse direction, small circles once more, getting a little larger as you find that range of mobility. And all you're doing is just oiling up any dryness in the ankles, in that hip, a little bit in the knee. Go ahead and bring standing balanced weight to both legs. Bend the knees, give yourself a gentle bounce. Lengthening up once more, we'll bring standing weight to the right side of the body, to the right leg, and keep a gentle bend if you need. Lifting the left heel, make small circles at the ankles. You can start to radiate a little bigger in those movements as you find it's available to you. Maybe bring a little more of the knee, maybe a little more in the hip, but small exploratory movements. Feel free to make anything that you think might feel good there. Go ahead and start making small circles in the opposite direction. And as you get a little better acquainted with how your hip, your knee, your ankle is feeling, maybe that roll gets a little wider. And then we can let that hip, let that side of the body come back down, bringing balancing weight to both legs, both sides of the body. So you can rock on the feet, heel to toe, and reestablish that home position of mountain. Feet are about hips distance apart, right underneath the hips, slight bend to the knees. And we'll go ahead and move on up to the upper shoulders now. Now when we come up here, give yourself a nice long lengthening of your mountain. See if you can lift up like a string pulling you up from the crown of the head. And as it lifts up, see if you can press through the big toes. And you really want to see if you can just press even distribution of weight on the soles of the feet. Should help you to lengthen through the legs. Tuck under that tailbone and bring it right under the spine, hopefully. And as this occurs, as we move up towards the shoulders, if you find that you had a tented tilt to the hips at that point, hopefully we're lifting up and we're bringing the shoulders back and down right over the pelvic bowl so we can bring our alignment of the shoulders over the hips, over the knees, over the ankles. And now we'll be working more on the shoulders. Palms facing forward. Let's go ahead and inhale. Lift the shoulders up. Feel as if your torso is lifting as well at the top of that inhale. And exhale, slowly roll the shoulders back. Just let them melt down. If you can tuck in the shoulder points at the very bottom into the mid-back, the bottom of your exhale, that's just a nice little touch there. We're doing a total of 4 inhales up, 4 exhales on those shoulder rolls back. And this first set is just all about facilitating these shoulder releasing movements with the breath. See if you can connect to your yogic breath. And as you finish up your first round, I'm going to repeat a second set here. We're lifting up the shoulders, still on the inhale, but this time roll them forward on the exhale. Still melting down the back, tucking them into the mid-back if you can by the bottom of the exhale. Total of 4 breath cycles here. And assist that release with the sound of the ocean at the back of the throat. Belly button comes in towards the spine at the bottom of the exhale. Core is engaged. And at that last exhale, we're going to go ahead, coming back to our mountain. See if you've still held on to that last pose. You can lift up the feet, release any still activated muscles. And we'll go ahead and come on up towards the neck now. We're almost done with our warm-ups. Inhaling nice and tall, palms facing forward. String at the crown of our head, lifting up at the top of the inhale. So all we have to do is exhale, right earlobe towards the right shoulder. Left shoulder and right shoulder still in line. Inhale, feel that lift at the sternum, the top of the chest. Exhale, turn the gaze if you haven't already. We're just allowing the face to turn until it naturally stops. Keeping the shoulders in line with one another, hips in line, ankles in line. And so we're rooted, good strong column of support from the shoulders down as we find release on the left side of our neck. With each inhale in, energy, seeking any achiness. With each exhale out, letting that achiness go, feeling rooted. And after your very last exhale, maybe the eyes are resting at the rightmost of your vision. We can inhale the eyes, the gaze turns, and the head lifts. The center of the head is lifting completely towards the ceiling at the top of the inhale. So all you have to do is exhale over to the left side. Inhale to lift the chest. Exhale to turn the gaze if you haven't already. Each inhale finds energy entering the body. With each exhale, see if you can release any stiffness. Right side of the neck, maybe even in the eyes. Hopefully you have your rooted, stable center from the shoulders all the way down to the feet, nice and stable. And after the very last breath, go ahead and bring the eyes, the gaze, the crown of the head shining towards the ceiling all the way up. So all you have to do is, on the exhale, just let the eyes float downward. Stopping at about 6 feet in front of you at the top of the mat. Shoulders are nice and wide still, palms facing forward. Inhaling, you feel that nice lift, but a slight diagonal tilt at the crown of the head. You have a space about the size of a tennis ball underneath the chin. We have good spacing. We're not resting our chin on our chest. Shoulders are rolled back and relaxed down. And as we approach our 4th breath cycle here, after we've completely exhaled, core engaged, go ahead and bring the eyes up with the inhale towards the midline, past the midline, rolling the eyes towards the ceiling until we can see somewhat above us. Then stop craning the neck and use the next 4 breath cycles here as well to feel lifted at the chest with each inhale and with the exhale. Still releasing those shoulders back and down. We're just letting them be where they are. And finding space at the front of the throat with each ocean-like breath. Maybe a small O opening with the mouth, larger, till a larger O opening with a gentle sway of the lower jaw. Maybe helps to relieve any hidden tension in the jaw, any furrowed brow. See if you can release that tension there. And after your very last exhale, we're going to inhale the eyes back to center. Let them float back there, soft gaze. And then give yourself a little bounce. Flick out any residual activation at the wrists. Shoulders can roll, feet can lift. And we'll set our mountain once more back here. Got to buckle to my mat, and I'll returning to our mountain at the back of the mat. We'll go ahead and begin our folds for our walking meditation. So standing, we're just reaching in our mountain. We're reaching with our hands down towards the floor. Inhale, extend those reaching arms. Extend them up above, and at the top, reach up with the fingertips, engaging with the legs. We're stepping into our feet, engaging the core. Hinge at the hips. Bring that belly button towards the spine and start to lower the back towards your first fold. Somewhere halfway down, you can always walk the hands down, or if you've got a good back, you're just letting it unfold in our first lengthy forward fold of our practice. Here, keep a bend to the knees if the backs of the legs are tight. We want to feel that center of gravity from the hips all the way down to the heels again. So if you're feeling like you're going to tip forward, bring some weight to the back of the heels. Feel as if those hips are dropping into that good column of support right here. You can lift the toes, and hopefully that does not affect your center of gravity. Notice then where the back is. Like me, if you're really stiff, if it's been cold and you're feeling like the Tin Man today, you're just going to be more at a half lift. But you know, eventually with the breath, think about that good ocean breath to help you start to release. You might be able to bend one knee just a little more, and then straighten it just a little more. Keep the bend though if it's tight, and alternately bend one knee and then the other. You can keep the arms, forearms can be on the thighs, hands can be here at the shins, at the thighs. Maybe they're all the way at the floor. Maybe you have your bricks, your blocks in your hands, and it's helping you to meet your distance there. Now in our first fold, we're here for about 5 breath cycles, and I feel we're almost there. So to come out, we're going to come out with a slow roll up. And you start by engaging the core. Feet are about hips distance apart. We start to step into the feet, firming up our thighs. And we start to walk our hands up, inhaling deeply here. We start to bring up the back, one vertebra at a time, as we're pressing into our feet, tucking under the tailbone so we can lift up, straighten those legs, and help to bring the torso back up. Head is the last to stack on top of the neck. Give yourself a moment here to let the breath, blood rush back to the head. We'll do another fold. So making sure we've got our mountain reset. Inhale, reaching downward towards the floor. We're going to extend the arms upwards. And at the top, we might even reach up with our torso. Exhale, engage the core. Start to hinge at the hips. Bend the knees if you need. Deep bend is just fine. But we're just hinging at the hips with a strong, straight back. Walk the hands down if you need. And then somewhere halfway down, maybe closer to your fold, you might be able to relax a little more. We're only here for about 3 breath cycles now. So see if just simply swaying the hips from side to side, maybe you've got that hold once more for more stability, but wherever your fold is, you're just giving yourself just a little more time to release from the tailbone all the way to the crown of the head as the hips to the heels are supporting your lower body. Now you can focus maybe on just bobbling the head from side to side, forward and back, and maybe in small circles, kind of like a plumb line. See if your arms can relax. See if you can just be nice and relaxed with the upper torso, best that you can. You can hold on to the head with the neck muscles, or you can just try to release. And then with the next inhale, we're going to once more come up with a slow roll up. Find your center. Feel as if you've got that good center there at the hips. And you're going to, with the next slow inhale, do another slow roll up. Walk the hands up if you need, or come up with straight back with the core engaged either way. Slow roll up, inhale, pressing into those legs, lengthening as you come up. Hands come up overhead, hands together or apart if needed, and then down, heart center with the exhale. Holding on to hands at the heart center, we'll start our walking meditation here. We're going to do another fold from back here. Inhaling, watch the fingertips rise, lifting all the way up, separate here, exhale. Hinge at the hips, bend the knees, come on down for another fold. And here we're going to press into our palms, wherever they have contact. Maybe it's with the mat, the blocks, the legs. We're going to do a half lift. Inhaling, nice and long through the back. See if you can get this 90-degree angle, or maybe it's just lengthening through the back best that you can. It might be more of a 45, but we're just going to lengthen and then exhale, return to the fold. And then come on up. We're going to walk up one vertebra at a time, or we're going to inhale with a straight back. Either way, the core is engaged. Coming on up, hands down, heart center, and now we're going to do a walking meditation. So pressing into the palms, bringing standing weight to the left leg, lift up the right foot, and then exhale it down. You can do the heel or the mid foot, ball of foot and toes down. Lift up the left foot, exhale that down. And so basically it's 1 breath cycle per step. Inhaling for the lift off, exhaling for the set down. And as we make our way to the top of the mat, 1 full breath cycle per step. We'll meet at the top of the mat, looking down at the fingertips, pressing into the palms. Inhale, watch them rise. Separate the palms and exhale. Engage the core, bend the knees and hinge at the hips. Come on down. Walk the hands down halfway if you need, or just float on down. And you might have your blocks here at the top of the mat. You might have walked all the way up with your blocks in your hands. But here, we're going to exhale fully and then inhale. Do another half lift, lengthening through the back, best that you can. Hips to heels as well as tailbone to the crown of the head, and then exhale. Fold once more, hinging at the hips, and bring the hands down to either side. Maybe they're at the blocks, but we start to walk the hands back with the feet in. We bring the feet all the way back and walking the shoulders, inhaling the shoulders over the wrists, and then bringing the knees down, untucking the toes, letting the tops of the ankles as well as the shins support the lower part of the body as the upper part of the body is supported by extended arms. Now, if the wrists are kind of sensitive, you can bring them forward a little bit, but we want them somewhat over the wrists. Fingers are splayed, and your belly button, engage your core. Belly button should be sticking to the ribs, to the spine. A nice engaged core, and give yourself a good, gentle looking downward so you can feel that length from perhaps the shins all the way to the crown of the head. One more deep inhale. We're going to tuck the toes, lift up the hips. Exhale, press into those extended arms so you can bring the hips back to down dog. Bend the knees deeply if the backs of your legs are tight. Your down dog might look like an upside down U with the heels up. That's okay. What we're looking for is eventually bringing the heels lower towards the mat and eventually lengthening through the legs, but only as it's available to you. And eventually those hips might become less of a U at the top and more of a upside down V. But we're all working on our own pace. So with your practice, we're here for about 5 breath cycles for the first down dog. And we're almost done here. So with the next inhale, go ahead and roll the eyes towards the hands. Inhaling deeply. Now we're going to engage the core. Exhale, walk the hands with deep bends to the knees to the back of the mat. You might have the bricks to help you come on back to the fold, to the back of the mat. Inhaling, press into the shins, into the blocks, into the mat, wherever your hands can, so you can come into your half lift. And then exhale, fold again. Keep the bend to the knees if you need. Find that hip to heel balance. And then inhale, come on up. You can do a straight back or a slow roll up once more, but engage the core. Press into the feet, the legs are engaged, and we're coming on up. Pressing in, tailbone tucks under if you come up, all the way up, lengthening through the legs, through the arms, torso, and then exhale, hands down, heart center, and we're going for a second round. So inhaling, hands to heart center, standing weight to the left leg, lift the right foot, exhale it down. Inhale, lift the left foot. Exhale that down. If you come out sooner, that's okay. Don't worry about that. If you feel a little wobbly, pressing into the palms, engaging the core will help you regain balance. But if you fall out, that's all right. Just step on back in when you're ready. And at the top of the mat, we'll meet in mountain, looking down at the fingertips, pressing into the palms. Watch them rise. At the top, we'll separate them, engage the core, bend the knees, hinging at the hips. So we're sticking our butt back, lowering our back. Hands can walk down, or we can float on down once more to our fold. Inhale, half lift. We're lengthening through the legs, wherever your hands might help to keep that support. And then exhale, back to the fold. Bring the hands down to either side of the feet. Start to walk the feet down the mat. Hands right under the shoulders. So inhale, shoulders over the wrists. This time it's a long high plank. We're bringing the heels to the crown of the head in one direction, that horizontal, slight diagonal, and then the arms down and the feet down to the mat. We'll go ahead and lift up the hips. Exhale, press into the hips for a down dog. It's a little shorter, that one. And then here, you can keep the knees bent, or you can walk your dog. Alternately bend one knee, straightening it. And again, small, very exploratory movements. See where your practice is. If the weather is cold, I know my stiff bones are not as flexible, and it's just something to consider. If you're dehydrated, all these little factors. So one more inhale. We're going to roll our eyes to the hands. Keep a deep bend to the knees if you need. Keep the heels up if you need. Let's go ahead and exhale. Walk the hands to the back of the mat, to our fold. Completely folded here. Inhale, half lift. We're just lengthening through the legs, through the back. We keep our eyes down at the mat, mostly right there, and then roll the eyes. Roll back to your fold. Keep the bend to your knees if you need. And you can walk your hands up if you need once more, or you can keep your length. And inhaling, core engaged, come on up, all the way back up to mountain. Exhaling, hands down, heart center, and finally down to the sides. And just give yourself a moment or two. Let the blood rush back to the head. Hopefully you feel a little warmer. And when you start out, if you know you're feeling stiffer, go slowly. But as you're feeling more of that range of movement, if it's available to you, then you can move a little faster. But again, it depends on your practice, how you're feeling. It's a great time for some water. And we'll be moving into our balancing pose as we stand for right now. I'll be moving to the side. of the mat, but you can stay where you are to see just where we start with our standing. It's our usual mountain pose, and it's about one of these floor tiles I like to think of. But we want it to be a little wider than that, so just step out to the side. And as you naturally step out to the side, just recalibrate your stance at this point. It shouldn't be so wide. It should just be a little wider than your normal mountain. And you can think of it as sort of like a rectangle, a tall rectangle from the feet all the way up to the hips. We want that nice support. I'm going to turn to the side so you can see. At some point, if your knees are buckling in, if you've got that anterior tilt of the hips so that they go forward and the butt sticks back, we're just getting to this point where we want to lengthen through the legs. So again, we have our point of our feet that we begin with, the foundation. We're just trying to bring our weight to evenly distribute over the feet with a little closer to the ankle towards the heel. So if you can imagine, are you rolling out to the outer edges, the inner edges, to the toes, to the heels? So you can actually do those rollings and then find your center at the feet. And then as you move on up to the knees, you can feel whether or not your knees need to keep that micro bend or whether or not they can start to lengthen. You may have to roll at the ankles to find that out. And as you do that, you'll notice the orientation of the tailbone. As you stick the tailbone out, you have more of your upper body pitched forward. That's a lot of pressure on the lower back, on the neck. So what we're trying to do is tuck under the tailbone, lengthen through the legs, bring those shoulders back and over the pelvic bowl. So eventually we have this tucked under tail. We're pressing into these legs, and any bow legs in or bow legged out, we're lengthening, trying to get that nice even distribution so we can feel the center right there at the back of the heels, closer to the arch. And as we're moving up towards the shoulders, just being in line, hopefully, with the hips. And this is all we are just doing as we come into standing for a great long time. If you have that stacking of your joints, your living architecture, you could stand like this all day long. So, standing here now that we've got this situated, you can bring your hands up to the hips. So you've got that good stability. You're not pressing too much into the heels, not pressing into the outer, inner, or toes. Just a nice even distribution of the legs. The knees oriented towards the front, the tailbone tucked under. And as you lift up through the sternum, lifting up, inhaling, rolling those shoulders back and down, and then just relax. The nice thing about our living architecture, if it's situated, stacked on top of each other, we can relax much of our musculature. Those skeletal muscular muscles that keep us upright. And now, as we stand here, let's go ahead and bring the arms up. Palms are facing forward. And then if you can have the palms face each other, see if you could touch palms together. If you can't, then go ahead and just keep them facing each other, lifting up above the shoulders. If you can interlace the fingers and let the pointer fingers and the thumbs out, you can do that too. But again, we're noticing how that affects our balance. So inhale, lift up through the shoulders. Exhale, hands down heart center and release through the shoulders, the top of the shoulders. Let them just kind of roll forward and back. You can do something like this and swing forward one hand and then switch the positions. And then come on back to our standing once more. We're going to reach up once again and lift up at the top with our fingertips. See if you can interlace the fingers, point up with the pointer finger. And with your left foot, make sure it's anchored. Do not let it lift up. We're just going to lift up at the fingertips and then at the hips, all the way to the fingers. We're just going to lean until we stop. Don't do it too much. You don't want to lift up on your left foot. You want to keep everything nice and solid there. One more inhale, we're reaching up. One more exhale, we're feeling rooted. And then inhale all the way back up and let the hands float down the center to the side and then just let them loose. Let the shoulders lift up. Try not to lift at the hand level, but at the shoulders. Nice and loose. Let that go. And then inhale once more, nice and tall. Hands come all the way up. And if you can reach the fingers and interlace the fingertips once more, we're lifting up with the fingers and then keeping that right foot and left foot down. Just lean over to the left. Try to do it from this point of the hips through these rib cages all the way to the fingertips. Inhaling, you're reaching up. Exhaling, you're rooting at the feet. And then inhale up once and let those hands come down heart center once more. Bend the knees gently, give yourself a bounce, and let go of any residual activation of those muscles once more, forward and back. And a gentle roll of the chin, of the nose. Imagine a small circle in one direction and slow, small direction in the others. Small movements until you have larger movements that feel good. You might find some crunchiness at the back of the neck that gets relieved. All right, now we're going to bring our feet back into our mountain position and walking, lift one foot, lift the other, and right underneath your legs now. Now, I'm going to turn to the side. In our mountain position, we're doing one more before we move to the chair. Go ahead and feel that nice orientation. See if you can inhale deeply. And feel that rooting. See if the alignment, if you can feel that alignment of the ankles, of the knees over the ankles, hips over the knees, shoulders over the hips, ears over the shoulders. A gentle tuck of the chin, that imaginary line at the crown of the head lifting. And then all you're going to do is bend the knees. Start to bend the knees until your hips engage, and we're just sinking until our glutes engage. Our quads are definitely engaging, but we want to feel the glutes and feel the heels supporting the weight. Hopefully the upper body didn't pitch forward. We're still just sinking down into our hip support. And arms moving up. We should be in a very minor, but a chair nonetheless. If you'd like to go a little deeper, go ahead and bend more. But if you're feeling good, your chair should just be about your glutes being engaged, your quads being engaged with a slight, that feeling of the center of gravity here at the back of the heels. Arms are up. Pinkies may be on the inside while you splay the fingers out. One more deep inhale. One more deep exhale. Really engage the core. Stick the belly button to the spine. Lift the toes. And then exhale, release the toes, bring hands down heart center, down to the side. And with your feet, you're pressing into the feet, you're straightening the legs, tucking under the tailbone, and lifting up the torso. Lifting, lengthening through the sternum, the chest here, and then exhaling, coming back into your mountain. Just release into the mountain. All right, and then we'll go ahead and shake out any residual energy in our glutes, in our quads. Go ahead, use one leg, stabilize the other side, use one leg to kick out maybe any residual energy in that standing leg. Same side you're going to kick out to just gently before you cross that midline. And not big movements, especially if your hips are really dry and arthritic. But it gives you that release from the last pose, especially since we were standing for such a long time. All right. And as we're here, now we're going to move on to the chair. If you would like to just sit on the mat, you're welcome to do that as well. But here, we're going to come into a staff position. So I'm doing this from the chair. But you can use your blocks and make your way down to the mat as well. All right. So from the chair position, if you're not on something sticky that will keep your feet from sliding forward, bring a block so you can make sure your foot is kind of braking. I don't know what your situation is at home, but I found that sometimes if you're situated on the chair, and again, when we use the chair, we want our sits bones right where our legs meet the pelvic bowl. We want to sit on these two bones right at the edge. So if you're sitting on the chair, you would be down here, right at the edge. And then we're going to situate ourselves so that we can find that support on both of the sits bones. We're moving into our staff from here. We're going to bring our block out in front of us if for some reason that helps us to kind of break our legs, not break our legs, but keep our legs from moving forward, acting like a brake. So that's one of the ways that we can move into a staff position if we're not able to get down to the floor. And you can be in your chair. If you are fully on the floor, all we're doing is we're going to situate our sits bones once more. You can roll from left to right to get that horizontal positioning. And unfortunately, my chair kind of sinks on the center there, so I'm a little off, but I will just have to accommodate that. And if your feet don't slide forward, then you don't need this block in front of you. But if you're sitting on the floor or if you're sitting in this chair, either way, we want nice long legs. We want a nice upright back. So we want sort of this 90-degree angle at our hip once more with the lengthening of the legs. Once we've situated the sits bones, being balanced on our sits bones, then we make sure our spine is situated right there into the pelvic bowl, lengthening through the legs as is available to us. So if you have a deep bend in the knees, that'll help. If your thighs are really tight in the back, your calves, give yourself that kind of tented feeling because it's not as hard for your legs to straighten out, but give yourself that breath to kind of lengthen as we find our edge. Again, it takes about 3 to 5 breath cycles. So when you're lengthening through your staff, as you're just in your chair, all we need to do is flex the feet, point the toes. You can lift up, use the block to help. But here, we're just finding where our legs can lengthen. And if you're just on the floor in your staff, you're just pressing out through the heels, you'll feel that lengthening, and then just relax. We want the knees to be facing the ceiling. All right, so as we're here, I'm gonna bring that block just a little closer because I'm slipping with the socks here. Inhale nice and tall, the upright torso. And at the hips, once more, we're finding that hinging at the hips. Lead with the chest if you're not sure how that feels. But all we're doing is just leaning forward with our chest. We're gonna hinge at the hips until we stop. For some of us, if we have good flexibility in the hips, we might have a deep fold. We might have our chest on our thighs. For many of us, we might just stop somewhere in the mid-air. And at that point where you stop, and it takes about 3 to 5 breath cycles to find that edge. You didn't hopefully unbalance the foundation at the sits bones. If you veered to the left or to the right, go ahead and straighten that out. And then once you've found that edge, then you can start to relax the neck, start to relax the shoulders, and just release. You might have a block. In here, you can stop at the chair where you are, but if you're on the floor, and you're releasing, but you find that you just need something here maybe to help support. Some of us might really have more of our torso up here, and you might just find a little support with your block. Maybe with a series of blocks. But as I've been talking here, we've probably been taking at least 5 breath cycles. But once you've found that edge, we really just want to breathe 5 more breath cycles. We're trying to get to that point where the body can just release, aided with the pose positioning so that you can just use your breath and start to release. What does that feel like? You might have less intention to keep the body in a certain way. You might have the feet rolling away from each other. You might have a release of a toe, maybe a muscle in the hips. But you're quieting down, listening for that ujjayi, for that yogic breath, that connection of the ocean at the back of the throat. And then we may be approaching our very last breath cycles here, that additional 5 breaths after finding the edge. So to come out, we're going to slowly roll up. Use your hands, start to walk them up towards the hips, start to press into those arms to lift up the chest. Remove any supports that you might have. If you're on the chair, situate yourself and just lift up the torso. Sit upright once more. Give yourself a breath or two. Bring the feet a little closer together if they splayed out, knees and toes towards the ceiling. And here, since I'm seated, I'll start with this position. All we're going to do is one leg is going to bend, and as we bend it, we're just going to open up at that hip. So we're doing a half butterfly here, and that just entails allowing the one leg that we're going to open up to kind of roll onto the outer edge. If you're in your staff position, you might be able to just do that with your side of your foot rolling there, but you might need to do it with your foot on the block. Just depends on how that feels. So as we get up closer, we're bending the knee, and then we start to externally rotate. We start to open up that hip until it feels comfortable. Now, if we have to lean back, if we have to hunch our back, we're going way too far. All we're just trying to do is bring the knee up and then open up that hip and still maintain the somewhat upright position. And again, just depends on how open you are. So once you can find that edge, and that takes about 3 to 5 breaths, be slow. You might need a block to support the knee. You might just want gravity to help you open up with the help of your breath, with the help of time. But after 3 to 5 breaths to find out where you are, we'll do the same. We're going to bring this to our fullest. Inhale, stay here, and breathe an additional 5 breaths. Or you can hinge at the hips. You may not go very far, especially if you're tight, lifting upwards and just slightly hinging until you stop, and then relax with the shoulders releasing. Your hands might be in your lap, they might be out, and then just relax. You might find the need of supported blocks. I am so upright, I don't need that, but this is just where I'm relaxing. And breathe 5 breath cycles, nice and slow, like you're on the ocean. Much of this cooling down portion of our practice is just allowing the body to respond to the practice. It's giving it the space that it needs. And helping it facilitate release with the breath. So key, so vital, that connection to the breath. All right, and as we finish up this last exhale, go ahead and use your hands if you need to. Inhale the torso upwards. We're walking our hands up if we were deeply folded. And as we come up, then we can internally rotate that hip as we slide that leg downward. The sole of the foot making it down, and then the heel. And here, it might help us to just gently bounce. Small movements once more. In these longer holds, we're a little more fragile, so coming out, explore how your body is reacting. You might need to roll your leg just a little bit at the ankle, maybe an internal, external rotation at the entire leg. Small here, small movement there, and then we'll come back to our staff position and move on over to the other side. Now, go ahead and do the same. Bend the one right leg this time, and then as the foot draws up, you can externally rotate. And I'll hopefully demonstrate on this side, hopefully to that side now. And as we're in a chair in our staff position, again, make sure your sit bones are nice and supported. Staff position is just legs are kind of long, not hyperextending that knee. Keep a micro bend to the knee if you need. And then we're bringing the right knee up and then just allowing that hip to open up. And make sure you've got that ability. If you're on a chair that sinks in the center for some reason, just make sure your hips are a little oriented so that they're balanced together. And then you can just open up here. And you'll find what feels good to you. You may need to keep the sole of the left foot down. You might be just fine with the heel up, with the heel down and the toes up. But you're just focused on keeping that opening there as it's available to you. And when you're in a chair, it might be a little harder to open up, but you can always make a little adjustment. You're just more supported in the chair. Down on the floor in your staff position, you have a lot more space to explore that opening of the right hip. And once you've found that edge, taking the first 3 to 5 breath cycles there, then you can decide if you want to stay here and breathe your 5 deep, long breath cycles to finish it, or you can fold, hinging at the hips, and then releasing as it's available. And it is usually within this softer, deeper hold, you can get something to release that you may not have even been aware that you'd been holding on to. Oftentimes our habitual movements throughout the day forget to be turned off. We forget to turn them off. So this is one nice way. Something that yoga enables you to do is to keep that conversation with your inner teacher, with your body. Keep the conversation going so you know how it's feeling. All right. As we're finishing up on this side, we're going to go ahead and bring our torso up. If it was folded, bringing it to an upright, centered position, and then we can start to bring in that external rotation of the right hip, start to lengthen out that right leg as the internal rotation comes back to center. And then you can gently bounce that knee, do what feels good. You may need to stabilize the left leg if you're in the chair, and just give yourself some nice, gentle rotation movements with the ankles, the right leg. Maybe the entire right leg can be internally, externally rotated. Small movement there. Alrighty, and then once that feels okay, we're coming down to our Shavasana. So coming down to the mat, if you're on the chair, just do the best that you can. I can sit up with the chair, thinking about pressing into the feet, lifting with the legs, straightening with the legs, coming up, and then you can use the chair if you need to. You can use blocks. But come on down. Comfortably, with your hands and the blocks. I could have demonstrated that a little better. But anyhow, we're coming on down to the mat, onto the back. Our Shavasana is essentially just laying on your back as comfortably as you can. So if that means keeping the feet and the legs together and then letting them roll out with an exhale, that's fine. If it feels better to have the legs open and have the legs pointed more towards the corners, then let that happen. But as you're moving down, and I like to come down one elbow at a time, you want to make sure your skin isn't pinched or folded in any way. And because we haven't been on our back for a while, whenever you're horizontal, whether on the belly or on the back, after being seated or standing for a while, your hips might be tented, your knees might be tented, your lower back might be tented, so it might take some time to kind of release to that. If you know that you have a lower back that benefits from having a rolled towel underneath, sometimes if you have that achiness there under the lower, the lumbar area, that little space there, having that folded towel really helps. So you can bend your knees, bring that towel and kind of roll it under, go to the side, whatever helps you. Another thing might be to bring the hands up. And if you're laying on your back and bringing that support to the lower back doesn't help, or a folded blanket to the back of the neck, maybe just keeping the knees bent Sometimes we're just so tight, it's not comfortable to be straightened out. So you might just have to have a slight tilt of the, a slight bend to the knees. But eventually we're hoping that you can enjoy Shavasana with long legs, palms up, arms out to the side, in a soft gaze, if not closed eyes. The belly is soft. Notice if the tongue is still on the roof of the mouth. Release it, let it be cradled by the lower jaw. And all we're doing is responding to today's practice. Let the mind wander, and finally just rest on its breath. When you hear the 3 bells, we'll awaken. I'll be sitting up to mind the time. Bringing the mind back to the body. Take note of sounds outside the room, sounds within the room, and finally back to your breath. As you feel the air enter the nose, notice how the air feels as it exits the nose. As you become connected to the body once more, go ahead and make any movements with your fingers, toes. You can roll at the ankles, roll the hips. Make any movement to bring you back to your present vessel. we'll make our way to an upright seated position and end class with our breath exercise. We've been focusing on the breath of fire, especially as we're moving into these colder weather. This is just a really nice breath exercise to help generate heat. It does a tremendous job of strengthening the abs, all those pelvic muscles needed. It's just a good way to strengthen the inner thighs. It's just a good exercise to start with. So you can be seated, either crisscross applesauce. Try not to have your knees on top of your ankles though. Bring out one shin out in front of the other if you can. So you can sit in an easy seated position. You can sit in this modified hero position. Typically you have this breath of fire, and I'll go ahead and turn to the side so you see. I have a rolled blanket just to help me support my hips. The knees are just feeling a little achier this morning, so I just have something a little more supportive for the hips. And if it was really achy, you could bring it closer to the knees. But we want to sit once more with our sits bones on our heels if we're in our hero position. You have that internal rotation of the thighs. Don't let your thighs roll out. If you roll out, you tend to fall down. If you internally rotate, engage your core, you should feel your pelvic bowl, your glutes activating, and your torso should really lift up. And as we go through that motion of inhaling and exhaling, think about the exhale more than the inhale. As we inhale, we just hold on to that energy, but then the focus is on shooting out the exhales through pursed lips. Shh, shh, shh. You'll see the belly just move like a bellows. And then with that very last breath, our 20th breath, we're just doing that long extended exhale. Shh. When you're out of breath, hold onto the breath. Engage the core, engage that pelvic bowl like you're stopping that stream of urine. And then chin tuck, so you feel this imaginary energy just going from the root to the throat, just continuously circling for about 3 to 5 seconds. If you have to breathe sooner, go right ahead. Don't worry about it. And as this is a progressive thing, we're basically now starting at 20, and maybe in December we'll go up to 30. But typically we have about a first round of 20. I'll use my hand hopefully so you can see where we are, and then the next round will be 20 as well. So taking a nice deep inhale, holding it, feeling that air trapped right up here at the upper ribs. We'll go ahead and start on one. Shh, 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 shh. Hold it. Let it go. Let the breath return to its natural state. Then we'll do a second round. Inhaling deeply. Starting now. Fully exhaled, hold it. Release. And bringing the hands to heart center. Thank you so much for joining me at the ACC's community room. I hope you have a wonderful day. Namaste.